this sedentary life too long. I think it's time for me to get back to where I belong. Well, I've been getting kind of lazy. It's time to get a little bit crazy. Well, look out, y'all, the Geo Metro's on the road. It's kind of hard to get back to my wild and crazy life when I got a dog, 2 cats, 3 kids, and a wife. But I got me a couple weeks free. It's time to get back to being me. But look out, y'all, Geo Metro's on the road. I wanna sing along to some country old. Well, I drive at night on a 2-lane road. I wanna eat at diners where the waitress calls me y'all. And if I find I'm having too much fun, I might have to call a bus on my vacation stuff and tell them find another sucker. I ain't coming back to fall. Got a tune-up and an oil change and I think I'm ready to go. I got my flares and jumper cables in the back of my little Metro. And if I break down, it's okay, 'cause I'm a member of AAA. Well, look out, y'all, the Geo Metro's on the road. Shiny side up, Courtney. Sing along to some country old while I drive at night on a 2-lane road. And I wanna eat at diners where the waitress calls me dog. And if I find I'm having too much fun, I might have to call the bus when my vacation's done. Until I find another sucker, I ain't coming back till fall. With it all, got a tune-up and an oil change, and I think I'm ready to go. I've got flares and jumper cables in the back of my little Metro. And if I break down, it's okay, 'cause I swing with AAA. Look out, y'all, the Geo Metro's on the road. I said, look out, y'all, the Geo Metro's on the road.
Well, if I jumped in the river, babe, I bet you'd let me float away and drown. If I jumped in the river, babe, I bet you'd let me float away and drown. You say you love me, baby, but I never see you around. Like trouble
Good evening. Welcome to Governor State University. The League of Women Voters is our chief co-sponsor for tonight's candidates debate. And I know that the weather's bad and there are still people arriving, but if you could be quiet as you take your seat, we'd be delighted to have you keep coming in. Now, as you may know, there are two major parties. Each of them has a separate primary later this month. At the behest of the League and Governor State, I've not been involved in this decision making. I'm simply here to moderate and ask the questions and to help participate in keeping everybody on time. The two candidates from the Republican Party primary who are seated up here with me were timely in their responses and are going to discuss for the next 14, 15 minutes or so their positions, and then we will bid them a farewell, and we will bring out the candidates that the League and the university have selected from the Democratic Party primary candidates. So with that, let's have ladies first. Beverly Reed, 1 minute opening statement. Then Paul McKinley will follow with a 1 minute opening statement. We'll have several minutes of questions. And at the end, we will have a 1 minute closing. Now, at the point where I pose the questions, I'm going to ask them for a 30-second response. That 15 minutes go by real fast. Or a 60-second response. Ms. Reed, Dr. Reed, you're up.
Right.
Sounds like it's working.
Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you. In the interest of my 1 minute, I'm going to read my statement, so please don't mind. I am a bona fide card-carrying follower of the Lord Jesus Christ. I am an ultra-conservative Republican. I am Dr. Beverly Reed, number 2 on the ballot. By degree, I'm a sociologist, educator, and accountant. I've had 3 years of volunteer work experience on Capitol Hill with Newt Gingrich when he was Speaker of the House. I am pro-life, pro-biblical marriage, for immigration reform, for gun control. My vision is to leave people and circumstances better than I find them. My mission, like Governor State University, I want to strengthen and enhance the educational, cultural, social, and economic development of the region, namely the 2nd Congressional District in Illinois. I'm concerned about the issue of violence in Chicago, and I will hope to speak to that later. I consider it an epidemic, and I have a proposed solution. Thank you for the moment.
My name is Paul McKinley, and I'm running for the 2nd Congressional seat. I am not running against any particular candidate. I'm running against the Chicago machine. The Chicago machine has had this seat for 60 years. The reason why I ran as a Republican is because I was forcing you to make a decision. I'm forcing you to look clearly and point blank at the Republican Party and look at the Democratic Party that's in power. The Democratic Party has been in power in this seat for 60 years. You have the highest murder rate in America in this party. You have the highest unemployment in America right here in Chicago, where the president comes from. You have one of the highest foreclosures in the country right here in America, right here in the 2nd Congressional District. The questions that you're going to ask, I would appreciate if you would give me an opportunity to give my platform. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. McKinley, thank you very much. Well, let's get right to it, and let's start. Dr. Reed, you mentioned the issue of abortion. Obviously, that's an issue that many Republicans consider important. Why don't you elaborate? Give me 30 seconds on why you are pro-life and why we should outlaw abortion, and would you jail doctors who were to do it? You would outlaw it? doctors, the women who get abortions, would they go to jail?
Let me begin by saying that I'm a woman who's had abortion. I benefited from Roe v. Wade. I had an abortion because my ex-husband severely beat me when I was 4 months pregnant. I was on life support in 2 different hospitals for 2 weeks trying to save the child. When the doctor said that it would not happen, and I'm getting a little, how can I say, teary here. I'm opposed to it even though I've been through it. No, I would not put doctors in jails. I believe that there's a legislative process, and I'd like to work through that process.
Mr. McKinley.
I believe in pro-life, and I have a serious problem in the African American community where there is a proliferation of abortion clinics. It is no accident in our community that there's a high rate of abortion clinics, and they're using abortion as a form of contraceptives instead of having young people to sit down and talk to them about family. I support putting our family back together because our family has been destroyed with an alternative lifestyle.
All right, would you put doctors in jail if they perform abortions, and the women who get them, would you put them in jail?
Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. You can't lock nobody up because they have an abortion.
But you would seek to outlaw it? You would seek
That's
to outlaw it?
extreme. I'm not an extremist. All those kind of statements that make me seem like I'm extreme. They got Roe versus Wade. You can't lock nobody up for abortion.
You would not seek to do that?
You can't do it.
Okay. And, okay. Let's go right to the economy. Obviously, that's a hugely important issue. And Dr. Reed, is it your concern that, what spending would you cut specifically? Do you feel that the federal budget needs to be cut and that the budget needs to be balanced? And where would you cut specifically? And President Obama today was quoted as having told House Democrats that he favors a combination of cuts and tax increases, and he's willing to fight the Republicans for some additional tax increases. Would you support any tax increases? Where would you cut, and would you support any tax increases?
First of all, I would say that I'd like to see the budget be audited, line-by-line analysis to determine revenue and expenditures, and also assets and liabilities. At this point, I would not like to cut entitlements per se without looking at a line-by-line audit. I also feel that when you go to Congress, you have to become a team player. So to sit here and for me to say in isolation what I would and would not and to be quoted for, I think would be a misrepresentation of who I am. But it is a serious issue and it needs to be addressed.
Mr. McKinley.
First of all, I don't believe in raising any more taxes on the people. The people is already under a corruption tax. They don't need to pay any more money. Matter of fact, we need to be talking about refunding some of the money that they are not doing nothing for the people already. My whole thing in Washington is to go there and to ask for a congressional hearing to come back to Chicago and to investigate those people who has my community in the condition that it's in. I'm more concerned about what's happening in Chicago and not for these fake issues that they try to have in Washington.
Is there any spending program you would cut?
Certainly. The IRS. I think they need to be cut.
Let's talk about specifics on energy. There has been a debate about a new pipeline that would allow Canadian oil sands from Alberta oil to come down to the Texas Gulf Coast. Should that pipeline be built, and should additional drilling be allowed in the U.S.?
First of all, I'd like to say that if we're going to have a pipeline, that's a great idea. But I'm suspicious of the corrupt system that we have in place. Even if we brought the pipeline and it went straight through Chicago, I'm convinced that the corruption in the city of Chicago will steal every dime and make sure that didn't nobody benefit from it. I'm convinced of that.
All right. The pipeline's actually it's scheduled to go through western Illinois, but not through Chicago.
They are stealing
Dr.
from
Reed?
them, though.
My feeling is that if it benefits Americans totally, It doesn't hurt Canadians, certainly doesn't hurt the Mexican economy any more than it is now. I'm game. I think that the unemployment situation is so dire in this country that if we can benefit from the pipeline and people are in agreement, I'd say, yay, go for it.
All right. The president has said that he favors additional spending for capital programs along the lines of what's been called the stimulus. Republicans have mocked that, said a lot of that money was wasted. Would you support the president in seeking additional spending for programs such as transportation, transit, and other improvements?
I'd like to say yes. Even though I'm a Republican, I've been blessed to travel to China, and they have an infrastructure that puts ours to shame. And I believe that if we could create jobs in that regard, I would be a Republican in the House that would say, let's give it a look-see. Let's not just fight because we're on different sides of the aisle. How can it benefit? I'm not there to trounce the president because he is our president. He's my president. He's all of our president. And we want to have a country that works.
So the high-speed rail is certainly where China has
yes, absolutely, and I've written on it. It's
so
wonderful.
You would support that?
Yes,
it's expensive.
I would. Yes, I
Mr.
would.
McKinley?
First of all, my first thing with these public programs where they make sure that the unions get all the jobs and the people don't get nothing. I'm suspicious of that. I am in no need of talking about making any more money come to the neighborhood, and you already got billions in the neighborhood. We ain't getting none of that. I'm seriously saying that before they bring any more money in our community, the people in the community should participate in the development of their community. So before they get that money, we need to talk about it.
All right, let's move to what's been a very dominant issue over the president's first term, and certainly for the last decade. That is that America has been at war in several different places. Afghanistan now is certainly the next key decisions are going to be made in this term of Congress and the president. Should American troops remain in Afghanistan for a long run, medium run? Most combat troops are being withdrawn, but the president is talking about leaving some force of American troops there. Would you support him on that or oppose him?
I don't believe in putting any of our people in any country in harm's way. We would have to sit down as leaders in a community in the capital and to discuss what would be the best way to pull out. That's how I would do it. I wouldn't I wouldn't broadcast it because I wouldn't want our soldiers over there put in a weak situation where Al-Qaeda or whoever may pop up next and try to attack our soldiers.
I feel that we've been at war in those countries for so long that we need to leave in a genteel position, to leave the country strong, to leave our country strong, but to leave people there in an advisory capacity so that whatever happens, our interests there have not been undermined and our men died for nothing. Our men and women died for nothing. I do believe we need to remain there in an advisory capacity.
Another big issue, one that has gotten a lot of attention in the last few weeks, has been the use of targeted killing by drones. There was an American citizen who actually had his roots in the Middle East, but his parents were here in the U.S. when he was born, so that he was an American citizen. Should the U.S. government be allowed to use drones or other targeted killings of U.S. citizens overseas?
Am I? Okay. I actually watched today on television some hearings about that issue. I believe for me the first problem I have is that there is no collateral damage, that sometimes horrific things happen as a result of protecting our borders and our allies, and that if we have to make a decision to move in that direction, that we protect our own, protect our allies, and there be no collateral damage, meaning no innocent bystanders, men, women, or children.
Mr. McKinley?
First of all, I think that it do need to be a debate concerning the drones, mainly because we don't know enough. We don't have all the information. They haven't told us everything that's going on, because when you're dealing with the CIA, it's cloak and dagger. They're not really saying nothing. and then they have meetings behind meetings, and nobody really still don't know what the heck going on. So I think it needs to be a public debate, because those drones are being sent over there, and they think all Americans in agreement whatever they're doing. So I do think it needs to be a public debate.
All right, it is 6:15, and we had, as I said, we were going to allow the Republican candidates here to lay out some of their issues, and now each of them will be given a 1-minute closing statement, and then we will bring on the Democratic candidates. Mr. McKinley, you're up.
First of all, I'd like to say this. I'd like to say that in the city of Chicago, as well as in the suburbs, this district conscribes of Chicago, south suburbs, and the rural area. I'd like to say, first of all, the Democrats have had this system in place for 60 years. Not only have they had it for 60 years, we have the highest murder rate in the world. We got 440 CPS students were shot last year. 500 people was murdered. 3,000 people were shot in the city of Chicago. Roseland, Inglewood, Lawndale, and South Shore has the highest foreclosure rate other than California. The rate of this city, and there's no Republicans in place. There's no Republican, you didn't have no Republican state representative. You didn't have no Republican senator. You got a Democrat. All these are Democrats. The reason why these Democrats do what they say, because these are the machine candidates. You don't have no choice. They are selected for you. They choose these people for you. You vote for me? That's who I want you to vote for.
All right, Dr. Beverly Reed.
Violence in Chicago is an epidemic. I'd like to ask the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia, to work with me and appropriate officials to develop a medical model to deal with the violence in Chicago. I would like to develop a partnership between institutions of higher education, corporations, and the public schools. The educational system is broken, which we haven't spoken of, and the unemployment rate is unacceptable. I'd like to clean up and fix up the blight along the path of the metro train and within affected cities where houses are boarded up. I'd like to cleaning up and fixing up gives people hope and a sense to start over and start again. I'd like to respond to constituent requests for information and help in a timely manner. I am Beverly Reed, a native Chicagoan, 2-on-2, second name on the Republican ballot for the 2nd Congressional District. I'd also like to say that I am probably one of the few people, I know you know of Emmett Till. I went to school with Emmett Till on the south side, McCosh Elementary. I sat in his seat the year after he was murdered. I understand violence. I marched with Martin Luther King in 1964. And I thank you all. God bless America and God bless Illinois.
Mr. McKinley, Dr. Reed, thank you both very much. And ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce now, as the Republicans exit, the president of Governor State University, Dr. Elaine Maiman.
Well, welcome to Governor State University, and would you please, first of all, I'd like to thank the Republican candidates, and I would especially like to thank Mike Flannery, because he's taken time to consider questions, to bring his talents as a moderator to this debate. Would you join me in thanking Mike? Governor State University is a place where GSU votes. We vote. But yes, and that deserves applause. But a vote has to be informed. And so as a university, this forum is a way for us to make sure that we are all informed. We have high school students in the audience from the Mikvah Challenge. We have our own students, faculty, staff, and we have community members. And that's what we mean when we say we take civic engagement and democracy very seriously here at GSU. GSU is the only institution, the only one, that serves all of Congressional District 2. From the city to Kankakee, only GSU serves the entire Congressional District 2. I want to give special thanks to our partners in this evening, the local chapters of the League of Women Voters. Would you join me in thanking them? The League of Women Voters does extraordinary work in this region and across the country in making sure that voters are informed. I'm a member, and I hope that many of you are members too. Finally, I want again to bring to the podium, we're so fortunate to have Mike with his skills in moderating this debate. So once again, from WFLD Fox 32, the political editor, Mike Flannery.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, bear with me for a moment. I want to do a few moments here. We've got a little bit of housekeeping. First, we want to thank CAN TV for covering this event for cable and online viewers. Information about CAN programming is available online at cantv.org. This program is being cablecast on CAN TV Channel 27 and at youtube.com CHICAN-TV, youtube.com, CHICAN-TV. And let's also acknowledge and welcome a group of high schoolers who are joining us this evening from the MCFA Challenge. You guys want to stand up? That is a great program. Over the years, I've dealt with some of your predecessors in Iowa and covering presidential campaigns, and I've run across these high school kids from Chicago, and you guys make us all very proud. So congratulations on your hard work. And we also have a number of GSU students with us this evening who've been discussing federal legislative issues. They've been preparing for tonight's forum. Why don't you guys stand up? Let's give you a round of applause. And I want to thank those of you who submitted questions. You helped me to frame some of the questions that I'll be asking, and you will undoubtedly recognize some of your input. So thank you all very, very much. Now let's welcome the Democratic candidates that we have here. First, let me just read one other housekeeping item. And this is mostly for the benefit of the candidates who are here and those who aren't. There were certain guidelines that were set up for time of arrival, and the sponsors want me to say that we apologize for the need to modify those guidelines due to the unforeseen situation at the railroad crossing that blocked. It took me another 20 minutes to get here as I had to circumnavigate through farm fields to get here. I got to see some of the more scenic areas of Will County. So that having been said, I think we're now ready for opening statements. Let me just introduce everybody. We have, on my right, your left, we have Robin Kelly, former state legislator and chief administrative officer of Cook County. We have Gregory Haynes. We have, you're Gregory Haynes, okay. This is, so you want to, I'll tell you what, why don't we just go ahead and, Robin, why don't you come up and everybody introduce. We're going to have, we'll have an opening, a brief opening statement. Tell us your name, who you are, where you're from, and then we'll get into it.
My name is Robin Kelly, and I live in the village of Mattison.
Okay. All right. No, we can actually stay seated. Everybody getting up and down. Why don't we just go ahead and we'll just go. Yeah.
Anthony Williams. I live in the community of Dalton.
Gregory Haynes. I'm from the village of Linwood, candidate for the 2nd Congressional District.
I, Charles Rayburn, do affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all foreign and domestic enemies. I, Charles Rayburn, will have the true faith and allegiance to the same. I, Charles Rayburn, will discharge this office in which I'm about to enter. And the audience said, congratulations, Charles Rayburn, you are the next 113th Congress member.
My name is Fatima Muhammad. I was born in Markham, well, born in Harvey. I'm from Markham, and I live in Chicago in the Chatham area.
I'm Debbie Halverson. I grew up in Stager. I live in Crete, and this is my alma mater.
Good evening. My name is Larry Pickens, and I am from Chicago, and I am located in the Calumet Heights community.
Good evening. My name is Victor Jonathan. I'm a resident of Country Club Hills. I've lived in the south suburb for the past 30 years. I attended Governor State MBA from Governor State University and Bachelor's of Science in Engineering from U of I. I'm a businessman. I've created hundreds of jobs as a businessman, and I know what is facing the 2nd District. We need jobs, and we need to stop gun violence, and I will do that. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Toy Hutchinson, and I'm from Olympia Fields.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much. So, Senator Hutchinson, let's start with you, and then we'll move right back down in the other direction. The president today said he'd like to see a combination of tax increases and spending cuts to balance the budget over the long term. What specifically, if you can give us 30 seconds here, what specifically would you cut? What taxes would you raise?
Well, I think, number one, I think we just had a whole presidential election that was focused on economic fairness. It was about everybody paying their fair share. So the first thing we need to do is repeal the Bush tax cuts. That's money that we could be putting into infrastructure, into education, into those things. I think we could cut defense spending. I mean, I think we could cut money to the defense budget. We shouldn't be spending as much as 25 countries combined below us in what we spend in that area. I also think that we could, let's see, what you say, what taxes we could raise?
Yes. What specific taxes, if any, would you raise?
Specific taxes that we raise, I really think it's more about making sure there's a more even and fair distribution of what the tax code is. So I think we need to close loopholes and exemptions and capture those dollars that way.
Which ones? There's been talk about closing the mortgage deduction.
No, we don't necessarily do that, but we need to stop incentivizing corporations that send jobs overseas. We can close those loopholes. We can close loopholes that make it so that it's beneficial for, we can make it so that it's beneficial for people to create jobs right here at home. I mean, I think when we're looking at the revenue code, we need to make sure that people are paying, it's flatter, it's simpler, and it's fairer, but that it's distributed, you know, in a fair manner across the board.
All right, Mr. Jonathan?
Yes.
30 seconds.
Yeah, I believe that we can close the tax loophole where the richest are basically paying nothing. We need to stop that. We need to equalize the playing field for our taxes. I am a proponent of the multinational corporations bringing our job back. I led a rally in downtown Chicago in front of the State of Illinois building in 2010 to do this. I've written on the inequalities in our business and employment system. My book is on equal opportunities by Dr. Victor Jonathan, which is me. But there are so many things that we can do without burdening the poor, without burdening the old among us. We can do this. We don't need to cut the needy, from the needy to give to the rich.
All right, Mr. Pickens?
I would advocate for cuts in the military budget. I would also advocate for cuts in the congressional budget as well as the...
Got some specifics? Where would you cut the military budget?
Well, I think that as
they've already, the Pentagon's announced they've already delayed deploying a second aircraft carrier to the Persian Gulf at a time of rising tension over there.
I think that one of the realities is that we're moving to a much more flexible military, and that means that much of the military hardware that we're relying upon now in the present campaigns are really going to become obsolete. So my advocacy would be for streaming down the military in terms of aircraft carriers, the number of aircraft carriers that we use. I think the present reliance, this is controversial, but the present reliance upon drones is actually one element that I would support in terms of cost cutting. So those are the areas that I would cut.
All right, Ms. Halverson?
First of all, as far as cuts, I've talked to a few retired auditors, and they say that they have found, when they worked on some waste, fraud, and abuse, they found several programs that are on the books that are not needed, and we need to zero some of those out. Also, the defense budget. There is $200 billion that was put in the budget for transitioning costs to get our troops out of Afghanistan. We don't need $200 billion to transition out. We need to bring them home immediately. As far as
You'd bring them all home? You wouldn't leave any there?
Maybe some, but $200 billion to transition out is not necessary. We also need, and as far as increases, I think we need to create more jobs. If we had more taxpayers, we'd have fewer tax users. And I have a plan with regards to advanced manufacturing and logistics. And I have a plan for reshoring instead of offshoring. And as long as we could bring more manufacturing jobs here, that would bring in more taxpayers.
All right, Ms. Mohammed?
So the question is about budgets to cut?
What would you cut specifically? And if you want to raise taxes, what taxes would you raise?
Well, specifically, I would cut the incentives for timber and the oil and natural gas incentives where they get money to test out things. And it's overspending happening with all the people who are already in. Areas, the overspending that's happening in devices by corporations that already have their money. And then I would increase those budgets and taxes for corporations that are already making a profit. Record profits on the banks. Record profits. They need to be weighed in.
All right, Mr. Rayburn?
It's not a matter of cutting taxes or cutting and things like that. If the people in the audience, as well as the rest of America that are stockholders, would pay their fair share of taxes instead of taking their funds overseas, trying to hide the money, we would have enough money here in taxes to pay everything that needs to be done. But on a more important note, we were given specific rules to abide by. 5:45 was the cutoff deadline. There are candidates sitting at this table with me that should not be here. They arrived after 5:45, and at this time, I would ask the moderator to ask Debbie Halverson, Kelly.
Mr. Rayburn, we're moving on. Mr. Haynes, go ahead.
Rules are rules. Rules are rules.
You've had your say. We're moving on. Mr. Haynes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Mike, what I would do in regards to cuts, defense, the Pacific program is contracting. There was a lot of waste in regards to defense contracting, over $20 billion. I would start there. But then in addition to that, corporate welfare and corporate taxes, because over $205 million was basically allocated for corporate welfare. But one thing we need to address, what we can also look at, is that the raise, because we're looking at revenue, raising the, let's say, the minimum tax for Social Security, which is $113,700. Raising that or at least eliminating it, and then look at the pathway for citizenship for those 11 million immigrant aliens that are here. That, my understanding,
they have to pay taxes for the path to citizenship?
A path to citizenship, yes, sir.
All right. We'll get to immigration in a bit. Mr. Williams?
I'd like to look at a new concept from a different kind of way. I would like to introduce legislation for a federal lottery that would deal with the American deficit. Like the state lottery, people had to pay taxes. The federal lottery, the winners wouldn't have to pay taxes. The surpluses would go into health, education, helping our veterans, helping our farmers. This federal lottery is a concept that could deal with the bleeding of the American economy.
All right. Robin Kelly.
I, too, would cut defense spending since they asked for less money, but Congress chose to give them more.
Is there something specific that you have in mind, a place you'd cut?
Just, I don't think we need, in our age of technology and nuclear weapons and all of that, I don't think we need, 3 million battleships and all of those things that we have. We don't fight wars like that anymore or battles like that. I think corporations like General Electric should have to pay their fair share of taxes, not not pay any tax. And also, we should follow the Bring Jobs Home Act and stop incentivizing companies for shipping employees overseas, and we should incentivize the companies that are keeping their employees here.
All right, and Alderman Anthony Beal has joined us, and ladies and gentlemen, I've been told by the sponsors here that, yes, there was a time limit for people to arrive. You may have noticed the weather's bad. There was the problem at the train tracks. We appreciate the objections Mr. Rayburn has raised. You can put that into your consideration. Alderman Beal, go ahead.
Thank you so much, and I do apologize for being late. First of all, the first department I think we need to look at cutting is when we look at our agriculture budget. Right now, we're paying farmers billions of dollars a year not to farm. I think that's the first place where we need to look. That's anytime you have the land, you're able to farm, but you're not farming, but we're still paying you billions of dollars out of our budget is a disservice to the taxpayers of the United States of America. So we need to look at that. If you have the land, you need to farm, and you need to produce the produce that your farm is supposed to be producing. We shouldn't be paying people to just do nothing, and I think that's the first place we need to look as far as cutting.
Tax increases? Would you raise the income tax?
Well, I think first what we need to do is look at all the loopholes, the tax loopholes that we have right now that are open. There's billions of dollars out there. If we just go back and look at the fact that the president gave and went up to $400,000 on the medium income, we need to take it back because that was not enough. Right now, we're going to have to go back and revisit the same fight that the president just fought in order to get more revenue in order to balance the budget. So when we look at situations like that, we needed to keep it at $250 so the rich pay more. Just 2%, and there's so many loopholes. If the top 2% paid more into the federal budget, that will help alleviate the pressure off of the lower and middle class, working class people.
All right. Now we're going to move to an issue that has already been a subject of debate between and among the candidates. You've seen TV ads and you've heard discussions about it, and that is guns. Because we have such a large field, we are going to go back in the other direction here. But first, let me ask for a show of hands. How many of you would consider voting for, if you get to Congress, how many of you would consider voting for the assault weapons ban that President Obama has talked about?
Mike, I'm for a partial assault weapons ban.
All right, we'll give you the opportunity to talk about that.
Okay.
So how many of you would oppose the proposal?
Not a black and white issue.
All right. How many of you would support the proposed ban on high-capacity magazines that hold the 50, that would hold more than 10 bullets?
More than a ban on that? Yeah.
Correct.
So more than 10.
More than 10. Okay. How many would vote no on that? And what about the idea of universal background checks? Right now, the NRA previously supported putting background checks, but now opposes it. How many of you would vote for universal background checks?
I could do that.
How many would vote against that? Okay, Alderman Beal, let's go right down the line on those. Your posture on guns. Are guns the problem, or is it something else?
Well, that's definitely part of the problem. In 2010, I passed the City of Chicago's gun ordinance. I was chairman of the Police and Fire Committee at that particular time. And the fact that we already have comprehensive gun laws in the City of Chicago, the problem is so many guns are coming into the City of Chicago. So what we need to do, we need to close the gun shop loophole, and because most of the guns, the second tier of gun exchanges is our biggest problem. If you have a car and you transfer the title of that car, you sell that car, you have to transfer the title. We should have the same thing with guns so we can track where these guns are going and where they're coming from.
Robin Kelly. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to let the candidates talk in this part of the program. Ms. Kelly.
As I've raised my hand, you saw everything that I agreed with. even though it's probably going to happen in the state of Illinois, I'm also against conceal and carry. When do we say enough is enough with all the killings in Chicago, all the mass murders around the country? So I definitely stand with the president, but it takes more than that. It takes a village. It takes access to mental health. It takes after-school programs, boys and girls clubs. It takes parents knowing where their kids are. It takes good jobs so people don't have to look at other means of support.
All right, Mr. Williams.
Violence is public enemy number one. Violence. Violence is pandemic in this country. Right now, we need congressional hearings to look at the pandemic effects of violence. In some communities, just some young boys can buy a crate of guns for $500. There needs to be psychologicals to purchase handguns. As a Lutheran pastor, I had to have a psychological. Maybe elected officials need to have psychologicals too. What y'all think? But at the same time, background checks are very important. The very fact that violence is pandemic, and we need to look at that issue, that violence is public enemy number one right now.
Mr. Haynes.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Mike. Gun violence is running rampant in our community. My remedy for that is very simple. Mandatory sentencing. Mandatory sentencing, for example. If someone has an unlicensed gun, unregistered, 5 years. If it's fired, 10 years. If it happens that you shoot somebody, 15. What's happening is this. These criminals are being sentenced. And they're being sentenced, they're only serving 2 to 4 years. They're actually being sentenced for 2 to 4 years, but they're serving 1 to 2. They're wearing that sentence going back to the hood like a merit badge from the Boy Scout. You know, they basically, once they start seeing their homie go away for 5, 10, 15 years, I guarantee you they will think twice before they put their hands on a gun.
Mr. Rayburn.
Mandatory sentencing.
Martin Luther King Jr. said, if a man hasn't discovered something that he's willing to die for, he isn't fit to live. He also said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And one more thing Martin Luther King Jr. said, unearned suffering is redemptive. I've got the best seat here at this debate tonight, but I'm afraid I might have to get up and leave, because here's the problem. Rules are made to be obeyed. I called Maureen about this debate, and she said under no circumstances will we... I'm following your rules. Stop, I stop.
All right, Mr. Rayburn, thank you. All right, Ms. Muhammad?
So as far as gun policy, I kind of equate a gun with a moving vehicle, a motor vehicle. So we have a lot of policies and rules about where we can drive a truck, or where we can drive an 18-wheeler, or where we can drive a tractor. So gun use and ownership should be related to where you are. In an urban area, there is really no need for high-capacity weapons. And even if you're trying to use it for sporting, there's certain areas for that too.
All right. So, Ms. Halverson, you were the only candidate, I think, who said that you would oppose the assault weapons ban and the restrictions on the high-capacity ammo magazines. But you did support, or you would support, universal background checks. So tell us why you support one but not the other two.
Let me first start with the fact that we need to have a true conversation, an honest conversation on the culture of violence. It's not just about guns. It's about the fact that our young people need jobs. They need something to do. Our young people need a lot more. We also need to talk about the fact that the state has cut $187 million out of the mental health budget. Nobody's talking about that. And we have a state legislator here you might want to ask. We also need to talk about the fact that the city has closed down half of the mental health facilities in the city. You need to ask us aldermen about that. So there's more to talk about, and I obviously don't have time to address the commercial that's very false.
Well, since you're the only candidate, though, who does have that position, let's give you a few extra seconds to elaborate. So why support the universal background check but not the assault weapons ban and the ban on the ammo?
So I refuse to support any other wide-ranging law that is going to harm a law-abiding citizen until we do something that is going to go after the criminal.
Can I add
What is
something?
that? What would that be?
So the criminal, we've got to go after. If you look at it, Cook County has had a ban on assault weapons since 1993, and they have the highest murder rate in the country. Less than 2% of the murders can be even attributed to an assault weapon. So right now, I will do anything. If you could promise me that those guns would stop murders and we could get them out of the hands of criminals, I would be for it. But until we can do something that is not going to harm the law-abiding citizen, I can't do it. So I will sit there, I will be there at the table, keep an open mind so that we can work with all sides to do something to end the culture of violence.
All right. Mr. Pickens?
We cannot eliminate all violence, but what we can do is reduce the opportunities for violence. The more that we work at eliminating the gross numbers of arms that are on our streets, increase the opportunity for saving lives. So I'm supportive of any initiative that will allow us to rid our streets of guns. Creating enhanced sentences for people who traffic guns, that's one option. Dealing with straw purchasers, that's another option. There are others, but I will have an opportunity to expound later.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Mr. Jonathan?
Folks, we are killing each other. Our young children are more apt to die on the street of Chicago than in Afghanistan. I remember when I was growing up, you can go and fight somebody and they won't come back to come and shoot you. These days, they will just go home and get a gun. We need to reduce the gun in our community. Not only that, we need to teach our children when they are still in grade school about violence prevention, anti-gun training for the young people so that they don't join gangs. We tell them, say no to gangs. Right from when they're still in grade school, we need to teach them that so that they won't be killing each other. Give them something else to go to besides gangs.
All right.
Have
Mr.
community
Jonathan,
programs for them. That's what we need to do.
Ms. Hutchinson?
I do think it's a much more comprehensive issue. And I think guns are a part of it, and that's why I would support common sense safety legislation that the country is calling for right now. When we talk about the cycle of violence, I think we cannot not talk about bringing kids to a place where they understand that we support them, we love them, and there are things for them to do. We want them to work in the summer. We want them to have access to after-school care programs. We want to go to mental health. We have to do all that we can, and we can't stop and do nothing because we're afraid that that one thing may not pass. At this stage right now, 9 out of every 10 Americans understands that with rights come responsibilities. We're not going after Second Amendment rights. We're actually going after the safety of our entire community. So I stand with the President on comprehensive measures to do all that we can to save every life that we can.
Okay, let's go in a slightly different direction here. In an issue that's related to energy and the economy, and we'll just go right back down the way. Ms. Hutchinson, do you believe that climate change is occurring, and is it caused by human beings, human activity? And if so, should the federal government do anything about it?
Yes and yes. I do believe that climate change is occurring. I do believe that there's an impact from human activity. If you just watch how many storms we're having, the rising of the temperature, warm winters and different, cooler summers, you see what's happening across the thing. Anyone who denies it is denying really what's almost settled science now. 90% of the world's climatologists agree that climate change is occurring. And we have to do things that start the federal government can do things to incentivize things. Like, we've got now incentives for certain kinds of light bulbs that you buy if you understand how much energy that saves. There are a number of different things we can do at the federal level to incentivize the change of behavior. And I think that to that extent, we have to, otherwise we're going to see other cycles keep going where we see more and more damage, and we can't decide that because the rest of the world's not doing anything, then the United States can't do anything. This is settled science. You can see it everywhere around you, and we have to act now.
Mr. Jonathan?
Thank you. Our world is slowly changing, getting drier. The ozone layer is being broken. We need comprehensive emission control. The government needs to get involved to make sure that we reduce the emission from fossil fuel. We need to reduce emission from our cars. So anything that the government can do to improve emission control by giving incentives to companies to come up with cars that will reduce the ozone emission layer, and also our energy dependence on oil needs to change.
All right.
We need to change that and move away from fossil fuel.
Larry Pickens?
It is due to human activity, and I think that we can take steps. Cap and trade is one way that we can be proactive in incentivizing companies that make the effort to reduce our carbon footprint. We can move to solar, wind, energy. Those are options that we have available to us that provide the alternative fuel opportunities for our society. So there are some definite steps that we can take in that direction.
Ms. Halverson?
Yes, and while I was in Congress, I did vote on the energy bill. I also made sure there was an amendment in there that there was a revolving loan fund in there for companies who wanted to retool their manufacturing companies so that they could compete globally. And I also made sure that there was money in there to fund wind farms that, like Illinois, who has an energy policy that says by 2025, 25% of all utilities would be from renewables. We tried to get that in that bill. It passed out of the House, and it never went anywhere in the Senate. We need to continue to do things like that.
Ms. Mohammed?
Yes, as far as climate change, we are in that cycle. It's kind of reminding me of the movie Ice Age, where we know it's happening, and the other species do too. So what we can do is the human part, deal with industry-level policies. Polluters who claim that they're creating jobs, like the oil industry, they want to create the whole Keystone Pipeline and all of that as a promise of jobs. We can't afford that because it's too damaging to where we are for every species on the planet.
Mr. Rayburn?
Yes, there is global warming. BP is a perfect example of that. They didn't follow the rules. They cheated. Here's your teachable moment. I can see it's a little late for some of the adults, but for the students here, when you set rules, you should follow them. And once again, there will be other Super Bowls, there will be other debates, but right here, there is an injustice occurring, and they need to do something about it. Can't do it. This is my time to speak until she says stop. Then I want you to know that there's an injustice here.
Mr. Haynes, global warming, is it happening, and is it caused by people, and what should we do?
Yes, Mike. Global warming is taking place, and it is due to the carbon emissions and it's to the economic complication that it arises. But the United States can't do this, the elimination of it by itself. Emissions into our atmosphere. And from a competitive perspective, if we want to remain economically competitive, then we have to get the trade agreement that would assist in reducing those emissions. Thank you.
Reverend Williams?
I'd be a strong advocate for the EPA. Air, water, and land is important. I want the young people to understand air, water, and land is important. That's why we need more green jobs, solar energy, windmill. That's why you don't need to build a third airport. Illinois, we produce half of the grain for the world. In a place called Peatone, that place feeds you, and then you want to destroy the land by building this illusional third airport that will never happen.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes, I think there is global warming. I do think the EPA needs to do a better job in working with industry so when you're affecting a company or industry, you need to be inclusive, so they are part of what the new laws and regulations will be. Industries need some time to get in line. I also think we can't work in a vacuum because it is a global problem. We can do everything we want in the United States, but there's a lot of planet left, and we all need to work together. When I worked for the county, we worked with the Village of Linwood actually to start their wind farm.
Alderman Beal.
Thank you. Actually, Al Gore sounded the alarm years ago about climate change, and most of it is because of emissions and pollution over the years from automobiles and also companies who put a lot of emission into the air. We need to get off our dependency of oil, first and foremost. And we also have one of the largest solar power plants in the city of Chicago on the south side, which I help facilitate through the Committee of Transportation and also the Department of Environment in the city of Chicago. So we need to start building most of our buildings with green roofs. Most of the buildings we build now in the city of Chicago have green roofs, and we need to take that throughout the entire country.
Okay, and Mr. Haynes has reminded me that I promised him he was one who, like Ms. Halverson, dissented from the general view, at least in part, on the assault weapons ban. I did promise you a few seconds to explain that, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mike. Here's what I believe. Actually, a partial assault weapons ban. I'm a service-connected disabled vet. I'm a Marine. Okay. I know I've utilized M16 and an M14. I'm very familiar with it, an AK-47 and a Bushmaster. There is there's no purpose why anyone should have a military-style assault weapon in their place of residence or, say, in their possession. However, we have to recognize that there are some people that use it for their leisure, for recreational purposes. What I would suggest is that we would allow the gun dealership and or at a gun range for people to check them out and check them right back in, use them at the range, just as like someone would use it at a skating rink or a bowling alley, checking out skates or shoes. That's just that simple. No one should have it at home where a mentally unstable individual can have access to it, or a 14-year-old.
All right, Mr. Haynes, thanks. And we'll start with Senator Hutchinson on this one, and again, change the focus a bit. There's been a reference to this issue already. Should there be a path to citizenship for people who entered the country illegally or overstayed their visas illegally? Should they be given the opportunity to become citizens?
Yes, there should be a path to citizenship for people who are here right now. We absolutely need to do that. I think that the first thing is to deal with the youth of people who have not been brought here. You know, they didn't make the decision to come to the country. These are kids that are in our schools, that are graduating from high school, that want to go to college, that want to serve in the military, that want to be a part of growing our economy, and we need to give them a path to do that. Any comprehensive immigration reform that we do needs to be a humane policy that keeps families together.
And what about the border security? The complaint of opponents is maybe that's a good idea, but we're going to have, in short order, another 11 million here illegally.
Well, right now,
if we don't seal the border.
Well, right now, the net influx illegally that coming across the border is zero. Right now, we have a job situation here. So when you really look at how many people are coming in, those numbers have fallen sharply. And we spend $18 billion on protecting the border. So every country needs to be able to say, this is how you come in. But we need to have a clear, consistent path for everybody where everyone knows what it is they can do. And the first step is to deal with the folks that are here already. It is something the Tribune editorialized that the Latino community expects it, Democrats want it, and Republicans need it. So why isn't it getting done? It's because we need people to come together and realize that this is a problem that's not going to go away, and will only help our economy if we create this path to citizenship for the people who want to be citizens.
Mr. Jonathan.
I support the President Obama, on his initiative for amnesty for those illegal aliens that are already here. It is important that we have a timetable for them to attain citizenship. In addition, we need to strengthen our borders to make sure that we put an end to illegal immigration. But it is not the fault of the young people, young children that were brought here without their own accord. that we should stop them from becoming a citizen. As long as they have not committed any crime, they have not committed any violent crimes, we should have a timetable for them to become citizens.
Larry
Thank
Pickens.
I think we have to evolve our immigration system from one that is based on targeted ethnic and racial quotas to one that is based on economics. And what that means is that we have to look at the opportunities that immigrants bring to our country. We have to target those people who are getting degrees, advanced degrees in math and science and technology. Those are the people who will create businesses in this country. We have to give people the opportunity to join their families in this country. Those are steps that I would support.
All right, Ms. Halverson.
When I was in Congress, I was a proud supporter of the DREAM Act. It's very important that our young people have the opportunity to go to college or go in the military and prove themselves and earn citizenship. I also think that there should be a path to citizenship. Learn English, earn it. That's what they want. They want to earn it. Nobody wants anything just given to them. I was in San Diego and watched the borders and how they deal with it. There's a lot that needs to be done, but we do need to make sure that we work with all entities and make sure that it happens.
Ms. Muhammad.
All right. As far as the currently undocumented residents, there should be family-focused amnesty and an orientation towards what Mr. Pickens said, career and workforce priority for some people who are already here. And as far as it goes, we need global equity for the immigrants who show. While our borders towards the south are often used and crossed without paperwork, we have people from Haiti, South America, and other parts of Africa that have things to contribute, resources and skills and ideas to contribute and be a part of the United States, pursue their dreams. So I'm glad the DREAM Act helps some of my extended family.
All right, Mr. Rayburn.
I'm against the abuse and inhumane treatment of Hispanics that try to come and live here and experience the American dream. I want them to go through the legal process of becoming an American citizen. We can do that. We can also have other ways for them to become citizens and productive in America.
Okay, Mr. Haynes.
I'm for pathways to citizenship, actually for immigration. Actually, I look at it from a humanistic, economic, and actual political standpoint. If the American Enterprise Institute indicated or basically specified that once they receive the amnesty, once they paid their taxes, once they paid the fine, and they're covered employees, over the next 10 years, that 11 million people can generate $1.7 trillion for our economy. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Reverend Williams.
I believe in a true pathway to citizenship. Many persons live in the shadows of this country, and so I do support legislation such as the DREAM Act. But at the same time, we are all immigrants, aren't we, except for the indigenous population, the American Indians. And say black folks, we were forced over here. So our situation is a little bit different. But I do support the DREAM Act, and I do believe in a pathway to citizens in order that people might be on the tax rolls.
Robin Kelly.
I too agree with the pathway to citizenship, but I also think first and foremost that we need to stop separating parents and deporting them back, separating them from their children because their children are winding up in foster homes. So I think that we need to look at that issue first. I also think that people that have been here, that have done it, as if you want to say the right way, that the process needs to be more expedient. There are too many people waiting years and years and years to be citizens, and I agree with what the president wants to put forward. I do have some concerns about waiting until all the borders are secure, because sometimes I think that's just used as an excuse to stop us from moving forward.
Alderman Beal.
Thank you. I definitely believe that there needs to be a path to citizenship. There are 13 million illegal immigrants in the United States of America right now. Half of that number came to this country legally. They came here with a visa, and their visa expired. The thing is, we have opportunity here. We have the greatest country in the world, and people are coming here for opportunity. Everyone is coming here for opportunity to live the American dream. We all are trying to live the American dream. And I think if a person comes here and is trying to be part of that dream, we need to give them that right, because this is the greatest country in America. In the world, I'm sorry. In the world.
America in America.
Right.
That's all right, Bill.
Okay, I've got 7:04. I've been told we want to have this over by 8. So let's have a show of hands on this one. How many believe that the federal government should raise the federal minimum wage? How many of you would vote in favor of raising the federal minimum wage?
What about a livable wage?
All right. We'll give you an opportunity to talk about that. So you would not, Reverend Williams, favor raising the minimum wage?
I would do it for the best interest of the people, but people need a livable wage. A livable wage.
All right. Now, what is that? Why don't you explain that? Give us 30 seconds on
well,
instead of minimum wage, livable wage.
A person needs enough money to truly live off. Times are hard out here. Ain't that right, young folks? Come on, y'all talk to me now. And the governor said, we want to raise, just Illinois, we want to raise the minimum wage to $10. Well, guess what? People need a livable wage, enough to sustain you, to pay your gas.
So what is that now?
Light.
What is that here in Chicago? What is that here in the Southland?
Well, what is it? About $8. You can't live off of $8. $8.25, you can't live off of that.
No. What's the livable wage right now?
A livable wage right now? What's the livable wage right now?
$15 per hour.
$23?
You said it, we didn't.
No. He works for the unemployment office.
All right.
So he says $23. So what about making $23 an hour? Thank you for helping me out.
All right. Well, good luck if you get to Congress getting that through the House.
Love you, brother.
But all right, let's have a show of hands on this one. There's been much discussion. There are federal cases. There are cases in the federal courts. Should we continue? How many would favor ending race-based affirmative action and moving to some sort of economic-based, income-based affirmative action? How many would favor continuing race-based affirmative action? All right, everybody's in favor of that. Okay, and in terms of the President's Affordable Care Act, I know several of you in discussions that I've had previously with you have talked about the possibility of making changes in that. The President himself has even said he's open to it. How many of you have ideas for changes in what's called Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act? Do you have specific changes you'd make? Okay. All right, all right, Mr. Jonathan, do you have a change? Or yes, Senator Hutchinson, you got a change?
I believe that for the Affordable Care Act to really work, we need to have the government option to convince the insurance company to open up the market. Otherwise, what will happen is that the insurance domination will still continue and people will not be able to get the care they need. Some hospitals can refuse to take the government cards that people that are on the government programs right now have, Medicaid and Medicare. I've talked to old people that says that they cannot get dental care because the dentist will not take their card.
All right, let me stop. So let me stop right there. How many would favor a third, that's called the third-party payer, a government option? How many of you would vote for a government option as opposed to the way it's now set up? That's the way. All right.
So everybody can be covered? Yes.
Yeah.
So everybody can be covered, yeah.
So there'd be, but there'd be a government option?
I was the only one there that debated this whole thing. Can I explain some of this stuff?
Sure.
I was there. I spent a lot of years debating, both 2 years debating this thing. I felt like a lifetime. Everybody wants to talk about this public option. And people want to say, and I've read all the blogs, I've listened to what everybody says, the public option, they think that this is competition. Public option, if you do it based on Medicaid rates, it's a false sense of security. Because if you base it on Medicaid rates, A doctor does not have to take you. It's like all kids in Illinois. Everybody under the age of 18 has health care, but then they go to the doctor and a doctor won't take them. So this was a huge discussion. You can't have Obamacare with a public option if it's based on Medicaid, because you can't give somebody a card and then they say, oh, I've got health care. Then they go to the doctor and the doctor says, no, I'm not taking you. So you've got to make sure if you have some sort of public option in there, it's based on either negotiated rates or a co-op. Like I made sure that there was an amendment in here. And in fact, it's working out really perfect because it's a co-op. And the federal government has now lent the state of Illinois $160 million to form a co-op. There will be about 150 organizations in there that will be able to partake in this, and it will be true competition. It's not going to be based on Medicaid rates where a doctor won't take you. And I think it's very important that people realize that.
All right, Alderman Bill, you want to chime in?
I just wanted to chime in on that. Again, everyone in this country should have health care, no matter which way you look at it. We pay enough into our health care system to where everybody can be covered twice. We need to get spending under control, and we need to hold the health care people accountable, because you go to the hospital and they charge you $30 for an aspirin that costs 30 cents. We need to get our spending under control and hold them and get some regulations in place. That way we have enough money to cover everybody at least twice.
All right, let's give everybody a chance. We'll come right on down the table. Robin Kelly? You know what, sir? We're going to ask you to be quiet, sir. Sir, it's your question's not timely. Sir, why don't you make an appointment? You can ask your question someplace else. All right, Robin Kelly?
Well, the other concern is, when we were just talking about immigration, are the undocumented workers or undocumented people here, because they get sick and they go to places like Cook County Hospital, who, you know, we still have to take care of.
Well, and that's one of the major problems. I should explain that part of the deal that was made when Obamacare was passed was that everybody was going to pretend that these millions of people who are here illegally don't exist. They're not going to be covered. So County Hospital is going to lose the reimbursement, potentially, that it currently gets for treating those who are here illegally. So how would you deal with that?
Just economically, that's the other thing. Morally, we should help the undocumented become documented, but just for economic reasons, we should help the undocumented become documented because of the ability to pay taxes, because of health care.
So that's a change you propose in the Affordable Care Act. Reverend Williams, you want to weigh in?
Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked about a second bill of human rights. When he talked second bill of rights, when he talked about all Americans should have health care, housing, and access to employment. I think we need to revisit that. I think if every congressman has universal health care, my son had surgery. If I didn't have the insurance, his surgery towards ACL and meniscus, that was $100,000 surgery. But I had insurance. Every American, everyone, they have it in Europe, they have it in other industrialized companies. We can do it. That's why I'm talking about passing this legislation for the federal lottery to cover health care.
And I agree. Actually, no one should go without health care. Sure, there's an economic issue, but here's the thing. Those 11 million undocumented individuals, again, with the pathway to citizenship, they become covered employees, covered employees. Basically, they pay into the system, and then there's that reimbursement that takes place. But I want to go back to something. If someone goes to the hospital and a doctor refuses to service them, that is not only, I would say, against regulation. That doctor or there should be some type of law to address that, because
I know if you're sick and you go to the hospital, they are required to take care of you.
They should take care of.
But I think that I think the reference was to you going and saying, hey, I want you to be my doctor. They don't have to do that. Mr. Rayburn.
We all agree that everyone deserves health care. Doctors treat people the way they do because we treat each other the way we're treating each other tonight. They know they can get away with the rules, bending the rules. And like I said, there will be other Super Bowls, there will be other debates, and I will make my points at those debates. But none of these other candidates will stand up in Congress because none of them stood up tonight when they treated us unfairly and allowed all of these people that weren't supposed to be on the platform for arriving late to be here on the platform.
Mr. Rayburn, thank you. Ms. Muhammad?
All right, I'm going to take my whole 40 seconds to say that, first of all, as far as Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, we have to let it roll out completely. As it's rolling out, people are benefiting and lives are being saved because they're receiving the treatments and the health care. And so it's kind of like, you know, you take some medicine, but then you don't take some medicine. It doesn't work in a bottle, so let it roll out. Second thing, and there needs to be education about it instead of miseducation about it. Second thing, corporate profit concerns do not belong in health care. Health care is a right.
All right. And Ms. Alvarez, you've already addressed this issue. Larry Pickens?
I agree with everyone else that health care is a basic right that we have. I think that one area where there are some options and there is flexibility is around the role that the navigators will have with respect to once Obamacare is actually implemented. I think that navigators, this will be a federally funded effort, will have an opportunity to also do some significant community work in the context of interpreting Obamacare and also relating to hospitals and doctors. So that's a role I would want to expand upon.
All right. Mr. Jonathan, you've addressed it too. Senator Hutchinson.
Well, I for one actually was a little disappointed when public option came off the table, because I think the way I understood it was Medicare for all. I know how important Medicare is in the lives of our senior population who rely on it desperately, and I think we missed an opportunity to talk about public option, private option. Post office is a public option, FedEx is a private option. The reason FedEx doesn't charge you $99 to send something overnight is because the post office will do it for $6. The government, an option for everybody to access and be in the stream. Nobody in this country should ever go broke, should lose everything when they get sick, any more than you should go broke trying to get an education, any more than nobody should go broke for this. And to make sure that we have access for as many people as possible, I think is critical, but we need to let it roll out. It hasn't even rolled out all the way yet.
Okay, you know, you touched on an issue that I wanted to get to in a little bit, but you mentioned it. Let's get to it. Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, it depends on what the timetable is. It depends on which actuary and CPA, green eye shade guy or gal you listen to. Over the long run, they all need changes to stay solvent. What, if any, changes are needed for these so-called entitlement programs?
Right.
And I guess Social Security is a social insurance program, but I don't think people understand that when Social Security began, the average life expectancy was less than 65 years. So the odds were you were going to be dead by the time you became eligible to collect Social Security.
Well, Mr. Flannery, Social Security is not an entitlement.
I'm saying, that's what I'm explaining, that it's not an entitlement.
Yes, not an
Thank
entitlement.
you. But the other two are, and nonetheless, changes have to be made in Social Security to make it fiscally viable for the long run. What changes, if any, would you make, Senator?
Number one, I think with Social Security, we need to lift the caps. We really need to lift the caps. That would move us towards solvency in the next...
So that would hit those who make more than $113,000 a year. We've already had one
Right.
suggestion for that tonight.
Right, and I do agree that Social Security and Medicare are not entitlement programs. They're earned benefits. You pay into Social Security the minute you start working, and with Medicare, you have to work 40 years before you can get it. So this is something that people have earned the right to participate in and earned it back. So number one, on Social Security, I'd say lift the caps. On Medicare...
Now, on Social Security, we're already pushing back the retirement age to 67 gradually. There are serious proposals to push it back to 70.
If you are a construction worker or somebody that does back-breaking work, working till you're 70 is very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Most people...
So you'd vote no?
I think that's I'm opposed to extending the retirement age. As for Medicare, though, I would say the first thing we can do is renegotiate drug prices. The Veterans Administration already does this. That would save $200 billion over the next 10 years that we could put directly back into making sure that the way we deliver our services becomes more efficient. Those are two steps we can do right away, and they shouldn't be partisan.
And as you know, the President has talked. He and Speaker Boehner were on the verge of a grand bargain involving Medicaid, Medicare. Should something like that be pursued that would either make people pay more or would reduce the benefits?
I think what is most important is that we concentrate on the fact that Medicare and Social Security are two of the greatest anti-poverty programs which this country's ever seen. And I am all for reforming to make it more efficient so that my children have access to it, so that we know these programs are sustainable. I am not for allowing people who want to dismantle it be in charge of reforming it when we know that the goal and the effort is to dismantle it. We've got to make sure we protect it, we shore it up, and most of the American public is okay with doing that. We just can't do it from the frame of that these entitlement programs are what got us in the situation we're in the first place. That's not true. 2 unpaid wars did that. Bush cuts did that. Entitlement programs didn't do that.
All right, let's get down to the other end of the table and we'll let everybody address this. Alderman Beal?
Well, again, if the top 2%...
Let's give everybody 60 seconds on this.
If we lifted the tax cap on the top 2%, that will give us an infusion of $5.4 billion a year into Social Security. We need to make sure that the people that are making the most are paying their fair share. We're constantly looking at the working class people to bail us out of these problems that the rich people are getting us into. We can no longer continue to go down that path. We have to reverse history. And that's what we need to do. We need to reverse history. There's so much waste, fraud, and corruption in Medicaid and Medicare that needs to be cleaned up. So if we start looking at the waste, fraud, and corruption that goes on in those programs and making sure that the people that are making the most are paying the most, and relieve the pressure off of the rest of us, you will start seeing this country thrive. You will start seeing this country rebound and move in the right direction that it's supposed to be. Because right now, as long as we keep sending millionaires and billionaires to Washington, they don't have the interest of heart of the working class people who are out here making this country what it is today. So we need to make sure that we send people to Washington that have the people's interest, and that's what we need to do.
Robin Kelly?
At this point, I would not be for any cuts in entitlement programs. We talked about where we would cut the budget. I think we need to do that first, make sure people are paying their fair share, corporations are paying their fair share. Also, when we look at the entitlement programs, like we need to buy in bulk, use our power in that way, save money in that way. We need to look at fraud. There was one doctor, just one doctor in Texas that was found, and he defrauded the government $337 million, and that's just one person. We also need to bring in technology and not have duplicative services where you go to one doctor and need an x-ray, then go to another place and need another x-ray. We need to just have one x-ray and use our technology to advance us. The other thing is, I think, to continue raising the age you retire is elitist, because if you're a pilot, you have to retire at a certain age, but then you're telling teachers or other people you have to work to 67 or 70, and I feel that's very unfair.
Reverend Williams?
Well, I would like to give my Social Security check right now. I need the money. Not only is Social Security under attack, but I'm the only person in this race that has talked about another key issue, pensions. The pension system is under attack. If you look at my website, Vote Anthony W. Williams, there's a woman named Dora Green who I assisted. The story's on my website. Her pension was tapped in for some traffic tickets. You ain't supposed to mess with pensions, you all. Well, when we exposed the story, and it's on my website, 40,000 people were hit that day. Mr. Tyrone Cooper Jr., a vet, his pension, a Vietnam vet, his pension was reduced. Mr. Cooper's pension was reduced from almost $3,000 to $146 a month. So I want to pass legislation to make sure that Social Security and the pensions are protected. Look at my website and see the story. I'm not just talking about it, I've experienced it. And guess what they're going to tell you one day? The check's in the mail.
All right, Mr. Haynes.
You know what, Mike? Actually, we're talking about Social Security and spending and the debt limit and so forth, but it wasn't discussed after 8 years under Bush. 8 years under Bush, the Republicans took basically a whole lot of spending. There was no discussion in that regard in regard to the spending. They had two wars, the TARP, unfunded tax cuts, and all of that. but all of a sudden, the Social Security issue or entitlement is a main issue. If they pass the President's Job Act, the emphasis and raise some revenue and give people employment opportunity. And again, we talked about already the increase of the covered wages and then the pathway to citizenship, we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
All right, Mr. Rayburn?
Social Security cannot be touched as far as I'm concerned. It's not an entitlement, and the amount that most people get is still not even a livable wage. My mother applied for Social Security. She had a stroke. I took care of her for 10 years. She did not have enough money from Social Security to pay her gas, light bill, and they went off. This is why all of the students here today, I fight for what I believe in. There's always going to be fraud and hypocrisy all over, but we can't allow people to stand up and take an example of hypocrisy or fraud and then try to change the rules in the middle of the game. No, seriously. I was at the Mitsubishi boycott. People were inconvenienced. They were coming in to trying to buy a car because they had to get to work on 87th Street in Stony Island. When we started paying for taking our money out and putting deposits in the bank with pennies, dimes, and nickels, a lot of people were inconvenienced.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Muhammad.
Pensions. That's
well, Social Security,
Social Security
and Medicaid, Medicare.
Okay, well, I heard pensions. I had a flashback to when Governor Quinn brought it up at the commencement.
You are a state employee?
I'm a state employee, yes. And I've been an instructor for the last 15 plus years. And I went to the Social Security office, a beautiful office on 63rd and Cottage Grove, and got a printout of my Social Security benefits. And they were missing because as a teacher, they're trying to figure out, we're already saying you got to work till, you're 67, maybe 70 for me, because I don't know how long that's going to take. And corporate profit concerns need to be neutralized so that pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies don't need to make a profit, an increasing profit every year.
All right, thank you. Ms. Halverson?
My dad was self-employed, and my mom got breast cancer in her 40s. They could never get health care again. So my mom's only hope was to wait till she was 65 to get health care, and that was Medicare. So I don't know about you, but I don't think anybody should have to go through that. And Medicare should never be taken away. It should be strengthened. So I believe that there are things we could do. You can means test it. There's also in the health care bill that we passed, there's an investment income that people don't pay taxes on, or Medicare taxes on. So if you earn over $250,000, you will now pay a 3.8% tax that will go directly into Medicare. So that will help make it solvent. Of course, the fraud. Then Social Security, I believe, right now you stop paying into Social Security at $100,100. Eliminate that. Pay into it. But there are things that we could do to make it go further, but never privatize it, never eliminate benefits.
Larry Pickens?
I think that Social Security is the greatest poverty reduction program that we have going in this country, and that it's important that we find a way to salvage the Social Security program. I think the Simpson-Bowles approach was one that suggested that all of us have a part to play in this, and that means that those who are doing very well economically will be asked to pay more and to take less. But what that means is that it will sustain the program. We're at a level now of experiencing a 75-year shortfall in the Social Security program. And something has to give. And I think that this approach that Simpson-Bowles has presented is an approachable one and a sensible one. I think also with Obamacare, there's an opportunity to decrease costs for Medicare and Medicaid in terms of the way in which it's administrated on the state level. So I think there are some cost savings possible.
All right, Mr. Jonathan.
I will fight the Republicans in Congress to make sure that they do not cut Social Security. Let me tell you, whatever they're telling you, whatever we're hearing about turning it over to Wall Street, they got us in this mess in the first place. We are not going to privatize it. I will fight that because that is the way to get it to even go down to zero. It will not happen. Medicaid, as far as Medicaid is concerned, there's so much waste. If we are paying $10,000 for a wheelchair that is not even motorized, something is wrong. We need to cut costs within Medicare to make sure that it is affordable, that the government is not wasting money, and we should continue to strengthen it to make sure that everyone, when they become senior citizens, when they get old, they have this to fall back onto. We cannot cut Medicare.
All right. And Senator Hutchinson, I think you already addressed it, right? You started off at the top. Okay. Let's have a show of hands here. How many of the candidates would keep some American troops in Afghanistan after the president says combat would end next year? How many of you would keep some American troops there? Mr. Pickens, Alderman Beal. Everybody else would withdraw? So.
Yeah, I will withdraw all the troops. I think all we need to do is train the Afghanistans themselves to take care of their own security. We do not need to continue
Senator
to endanger
Hutchinson?
our children, our young men over there.
I think we need to, I agree that we need to train the Afghan people to take care of their own problems and take over the security of their country, but I do think we need to pay attention to how fast it could be destabilized if you draw everybody out. So we don't, I mean, I think I would rely on the best advice of the generals on the ground when it comes to that, and I think that's probably more so the approach the president would take, but I do think we need to bring everybody home. That's the best way you can support our troops is to bring them home.
Mr. Pickens?
I think the reality is, I think Colin Powell said, if you break it, you fix it. And I think the reality is that once we pull troops out, there will still be a responsibility to train Afghan troops to make certain that they're at a level to protect what we have spent our blood and treasure on. And that's not going to be a quick fix. That's going to take a while, and I think, therefore, there has to be a residual level of troops somewhere around 10,000 to accomplish that goal.
Debbie Halverson?
The reality is our president is the commander-in-chief, and he is the one that makes that decision. I don't have to support it. I believe they all should come home.
So you would not keep anybody there?
I'm not going to get that decision. I don't want them to stay there, no.
Ms. Muhammad?
Yes, I would, the gradual withdrawal that's already started needs to continue until the Afghanis are trained and able to exercise sovereignty without paralyzing us.
So if the president said keep some people there, you'd keep them there?
Yes.
Okay. We'll start with Alderman Beal, then we'll come back down. Alderman?
Thank you. I definitely, from a strategic standpoint, think we need to have some troops there. Every country that we've ever went into, we always leave some troops behind to do different tours of duty, and we've done that, you know, throughout the history of the United States.
Although we didn't do it in Iraq. We did not do it in Iraq because the Iraqi government would not, said they'd have to be subject to Iraqi law.
But the thing is, we have to protect our interests, all right? And so whenever you go into a country and disrupt it, we have a right, a responsibility to go back in, make sure that they are trained and that they can sustain themselves. But just from a strategic defense standpoint, I believe we need to have somebody there to protect our own interests here if anything starts bubbling up over there.
Robin Kelly?
I would bring the troops home, but I think I would be comfortable with us leaving advisors there, but I think we need to bring the troops home. We've been there too long as it is and have lost too many young men and young women, and too many of our folks that have come home are maimed. So I would like to see everyone come home. We can leave advisors there.
Anthony Williams?
We cannot continue to police the world and we need to just leave advisors there and deal with the serious domestic issues of America moving forward into the future.
Mr. Haynes.
Mike, I'm as I mentioned, a disabled veteran. I actually also oversaw the State Department of Employment Security statewide veterans program. As troops were demobilized and came back, what we tried to do is transition them back to the workforce. There's too much. The first thing that any leader should do when they consider, let's say, sending troops out is their safety and welfare. The purpose for being there, the mission, and whether or not it can be accomplished. 10 years of war and the tours of duty that these troops have been doing is entirely too long. Bring them back.
Mr. Rayburn.
Leaving troops in Afghanistan would amount to just leaving Americans there for target practice for all of the people that will hate America. If we're going to leave troops in Afghanistan, you have to leave enough troops there to protect themselves and do the job. I would bring them home. I would take care of our veterans benefits for them here and get them, work them back into society where they have jobs and be productive here.
All right. And let's have a show of hands on this. How many of you believe that the American government should have the authority to overseas use targeted killings or drones on American citizens who the president's people say the criteria they're using is who have put themselves at war with the U.S. and who are vowing to overturn our form of government? Others say under no circumstances should American citizens be killed by the American government without some form of due process. How many of you favor the policy that the president has been using with the targeted killings?
That's too complex a question to have a yes or no
That's not a
on.
raise of a hand.
Yeah. That's
Well,
too
I mean,
complex.
how many of you would like to see the policy changed, put it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see some adjustment in the use of
All right, Ms.
drones.
Mohammed, go ahead.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be some adjustment in the use of drones, especially on American citizens on foreign soil. That's just doing too much. It's just doing too
Well,
much.
everybody points to this case of this guy, Al-Awlaki, who was the son of Saudi diplomats, I think, was born here, was an American citizen by virtue of being born here, but who was trying to kill Americans.
And when he's back in foreign soil, deal with him. You can handle people who show up.
He was killed in Yemen, I believe.
Right. So, well, let me say this. Deal with him when he's here. Going over to Yemen and getting into their airspace, that just makes it look bad for U.S. We look like bullies.
Ms. Halverson?
So I support what the president is trying to do. They feel that these drones are going to harm fewer people because they're not troops on the ground. And sometimes American citizens, like you say, because he's an American citizen, get in the way. And that's a sad situation. But still, I think that policy needs to be changed. I understand what the president's trying to do. It just needs to be changed somewhat. And that's...
How would you change it?
He's the commander-in-chief. I'm not the president. So...
So there are circumstances in which you would
But
support...
I understand what that's got to be tough on him, and there are circumstances where I believe that he needs to do this. But it's tough. If I had all the answers, you know...
Mr. Pickens?
I would be the president.
He's president, but he's not king. And there has to be some limitation on a president's ability to make a decision about killing Americans. These are extrajudicial killings that are taking place. And Congress has the appropriate role of reviewing what the president is doing. That's part of our checks and balance system. So I would say that it's important that Congress take that role of reviewing this program, and the other issue is Congress also holds the purse strings.
Mr. Jonathan.
In as much as I support the president on most of his agendas, this particular one is a very dangerous one because any of you could be targeted if we allow this to be happening overseas. What will stop the government from coming to kill you because somebody said you are planning some terrorist attack? We need to follow the due process. by bringing them to justice. Even if they're overseas, we need to be able to get them and bring them to justice as an American citizen without going and striking them. Now, if somebody is pointing a gun at the police, yes, the police have a right to defend themselves. But in this case, we have to be very sure. Otherwise, this can lead to something much bigger.
Senator Hutchinson?
No, I share some concerns about extrajudicial killings. I also have a lot of concerns about extended detainments without due process of law. And I think Congress absolutely has to use its powers under a check system to make sure that this doesn't go overboard. It opens a very, very dangerous precedent, and we must be extremely careful when you start opening doors like this.
Do you have some changes in mind, some policy guidelines you would use?
I do think that we have problems when we start to erode a founding principle for us, which is
the president says there's this, okay, he's an American citizen, but he's over there and he's trying to kill Americans, he's plotting attacks on the U.S.
I think the standard by which you make that decision has to be extremely, extremely high. And as this conversation is evolving, the standard has to be extremely high. The same way we don't countenance when you like waterboarding and torture
so
when we
you
do
would
that.
Close
because
Guantanamo?
we want to protect our safety around the world. We don't want that happening.
Were you referring to Guantanamo with the extended
detention? Yes.
So you'd give them a civil trial, bring them to New York, try them for murder?
I just think that the standard needs to be really high when you're talking about removing someone's life.
A civil trial in New York for murder?
I think criminal actions are definitely warranted. Yes.
All right. Alderman Beal?
Well, again, leadership is about making tough decisions, not dance around the issue and dance around, what needs to be done. First and foremost, we have to make sure that we protect every American citizen at home. And if somebody is in jeopardy of harming massive amounts of people, you have to make tough decisions. And that's why he's the commander-in-chief, that he has to make that tough decision. He had to make the decision to go in and get Osama bin Laden. That was a tough decision. But he went in and he did it. We have to protect home and do what's necessary to protect home.
Robin Kelly?
I would like to see the policy change. When we talk about Americans killing Americans, Americans are killing Americans, right? In America with guns and with our culture of violence, and we're not dropping drones in neighborhoods to take out those folks. I think we have to do it in a more judicial way, but we're killing each other right at home, and we need to take care of that problem, but we're not taking care of it with the drones.
Reverend Williams?
A tough decision is being able to understand what the word reason means. We can blow up everybody on this planet. We have the strongest military in the world, but we've got to move towards civility. And I think that America needs to be an example in terms of what it means to have civility. The moral compass of America is broken, and we need civility right now. I mean, it's time that we're going to talk. A tough decision is that we need to beat our swords into plowshares.
Mr. Haynes.
Yeah, Mike. Basically, as Alderman Beal said, the president is the commander-in-chief. And he doesn't make this decision or take this decision lightly. You have to think about it. The bottom line is when you have Benghazi and the individuals that took place in that, if someone was an American citizen and participated in the planning of that, do they have a right to hide behind a veil of American citizenship? We don't think so. The bottom line is that, yes, once they take that step and participate in the planning of, let's say, murdering American citizens, then they should suffer the consequences for it. And the commander-in-chief has that responsibility.
Mr. Rayburn.
The Constitution allows for amendments. That's the proper way to make changes. If someone is going to be a threat to America, I consider them giving up their citizenship. Now, should we send drones with laser-like accuracy to just take them out? I don't really know that the circumstances behind that. I'd need to see all of the special information that we're not don't have privy to. But every question that's been asked here tonight can be summed up into one thing, one question. Are we going to follow the rules that we establish?
Mr. Rayburn, thanks. Let's, at this point, as I said, there were several of the students here at Governor's State who helped me out, and I really do appreciate it, by offering suggested questions. There's one here that, as we get towards the end, I think really is kind of an open-ended one that I think everybody could profitably take a shot at for 30 seconds. And it comes from Karen, am I pronouncing that correctly? K-H-A-R-Y-N, Karen Johnson. Is she here? Karen? Anyway, the question is, what would your top priorities be to improve the quality of life in the urban communities within the 2nd Congressional District? Alderman Beal?
Now we're getting to the nuts and bolts of why we're running for Congress, and that's creating jobs. The first and foremost thing we need to do is create jobs. I am a job creator. I've created jobs as my tenure as alderman of the City Council in the 9th Ward. I have one of the largest projects in the city of Chicago going on right now. I've built more senior housing than anybody in the city of Chicago. I have built 4 state-of-the-art baseball fields in the 9th Ward. I've appropriated $32 million for a school in my ward. I've rehabbed 1,300 affordable housing units in my ward. I have a history and a track record of putting people to work. If we're going to change the way our economy is, if we're going to change the climate of crime and drugs and things, we need to put people to work. We need to create as many jobs as we possibly can right now, and we can't afford to send somebody to Washington that doesn't have a track record as far as creating jobs.
All right, that isn't the final question, just so you understand, and you'll have a chance for a closing statement. Robin Kelly?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, from Karen Johnson, what would be your top priorities to improve the quality of life in the urban communities here in the 2nd District?
I agree with job creation, but I think we have to stop the violence first, because I don't think businesses will want to stay in the 2nd Congressional District or move to the 2nd Congressional District if we don't have safe neighborhoods. I don't think families will want to stay here, move here, or relocate here if we don't have safe neighborhoods. Whether you live urban, suburban, or rural, which this district represents, everyone wants safe neighborhoods. They want good schools, and they do want to work closer to home. So I think we have to work on stopping the violence, and that is with jobs, that is with after-school programs, that is with access to mental health, as I mentioned before.
All right, Reverend Williams?
One of the things is redirecting the flow of the federal dollars. Historically, the federal dollars have gone to status quo persons in this district. 79th and Essex is called Murderers Row, but yet in Hopkins Park, they don't have infrastructure. And some of the people that serve Hopkins Park, I have served Hopkins Park, have never seen that they get infrastructure out there. And so you have a diverse district that needs many things: green jobs, entrepreneurship, being very creative, developing a business think tank. So the district is diverse, but putting people to work is important, but also, and in Peatone, they definitely don't want an airport. The people don't want an airport out there, be clear. And so it's a diverse district, and you've got to be creative, but it's entrepreneurship, economic development, job creation, and dealing with the other systemic problems that have plagued this district.
Mr. Haynes.
I worked over 30 years as a workforce professional. Actually, I've interacted with numerous companies in every industry imaginable: manufacturing, retail, wholesale, healthcare, you name it. I've assisted employers, company officials in identifying qualified candidates for their positions so that they can remain globally competitive. I've literally helped thousands of people find jobs. My number one priority would be to ensure that the system that was in place to help people find jobs back in 1933 that was good enough for those people in the bread line remains in place for the individuals today who happen to be standing in the home foreclosure line.
All right. Mr. Rayburn.
Recently, Republican Governor Chris Christie said that he, as the governor, needed federal help, and he did what he had to do to get it. Governor Christie stopped and listened to his constituents, and here was the end result: comfort and relief for the victims of Hurricane Sandy. Now, when you send Charles Rayburn to the 113th Congress as a Democrat, I will have no problem going to Barack Obama. If Governor Christie got money, I can bring it back here to the 2nd Congressional District.
Ms. Muhammad.
Well, for the very, very diverse 2nd Congressional District, we need to run the numbers, but in concern for the people here, the students, thinking about how will they get from Governor State to downtown Chicago. Let's develop high-speed passenger rail. There's billions of dollars waiting on a plan. Economic development needs to think about infrastructure. What's going on with the water, our water supply. And as far as safety, it's safer when you have clean water and clean air, and you can trust your neighbors to not steal from you or have an automatic weapon.
Ms. Halverson?
Well, jobs, as everybody has said, and I have a plan on my website, debbiehalverson.com, about advanced manufacturing and logistics. We're the inland port of the country. Everything comes through here. But I think what we haven't talked enough about is our veterans. We need to do more about employment and opportunities for our veterans. Our son was severely injured in Afghanistan, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about bringing our young people home. We also have a veterans home that will be opening next week, or a veterans mega clinic that will open next month, something that we worked really hard to bring back to this district. It's about jobs. It's about creating opportunities for our veterans. It's about bringing them home, and it's about doing things for the young people, especially right here at Governor State University.
Mr. Pickens?
It means that we have to create a climate that is conducive to bringing about the change that we want to happen. We talk about violence, but what's behind the violence? Who are these young men and women? What are we doing with respect to finding ways to create restorative ways to bring them back into the community and enable them to be prosperous? These are the ways in which we can change our communities, create environments where small business owners will want to engage and use our young people as their employees. That's what I would do. Mr.
Jonathan?
I think it's time that you vote for Victor Jonathan for Congress. You need change. There is disinvestment in our communities. The unemployment rate in the 2nd District is more than 15%. They're saying now it's 8% national average, but it's more than 15% in the community. We need jobs. We need to make sure that we work with this corporation through legislation for them to bring jobs into the community. I remember when there used to be a couple of call centers here in Madison that people were working at, they were employing 500 to 1,000 people. Now those jobs are overseas. It's time to bring those jobs back. It's time to ask the corporations that are making money from us, from the community, to invest in the community. It's time to work with President Obama to bring the American Investment Act back so that we can have infrastructure jobs immediately in the community. So this is time to make the change.
Toy Hutchinson?
Good. I would have to echo everybody else. In job creation, I was very proud of the work that I've accomplished in the state Senate. When I first got there, we laid the groundwork for the construction of the Ileana Highway. When you look at what is the potential of transportation infrastructure projects across the 2nd Congressional District, we are in a wonderful place. And job creation is one of those things that will happen when you connect it with education investment. The fact that Governor State is about to go 4 years and start to take freshman students in here with really strong connections with the community college system, which is the only system that's nimble enough to train people to retool and train for a new economy. We are right now in a space where things are aligning. The Ileana, the 3rd airport, the expansion of the CTA Red Line, giving people opportunities to work here in this district at home will strengthen our schools, lower the foreclosure rate, and get the people back to work.
Okay. Let me just ask another couple of quick questions, and I am going to ask in a minute whether anybody has a specific proposal on ethics. Everyone out here knows the sad history of some of the previous, so you know the whole sad history of Illinois politics. We just had a former governor get out of federal prison a few days ago. We've got another one who's still moldering in the federal prison in Colorado. We seem to have a former congressman who's on his way to prison, if we're to believe the reports about the plea bargaining. So does anybody here have a specific proposal for ethics and integrity relating to Robin?
Maybe a couple of things, but one thing, and I know my staff is going to laugh at me for saying this, but I really think there needs to be campaign finance reform, because I think that when you in Congress, you're running every 2 years, and it costs so much money to run. And no matter how, like I know I'm a very moral person, I'm an ethical person, but when I've talked to different Congress people, not in Illinois, they say how hard it is. You come in with the best of intentions, and not that they do anything wrong, but you survive because people are giving you money.
It's hard to raise money.
So, right.
Ms.
Campaign
Muhammad?
finance reform.
First thing that needs to happen is complete transparency. Understanding, well, who are your representatives and what are they responsible for chaperoning back to the district. Let everybody know, put it out there on Front Street. Okay, your salary is this. You made these plans.
Let me stop you there. How many of you are prepared? I know some of you have already told me that you would. How many are prepared to release your income tax returns for the last several years?
To do what? Release your income tax returns.
How many of you would not release your income tax returns? Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I get my 30 seconds back.
I thought you had a great idea, complete transparency.
I've been observing the time limits. All right, complete transparency on what grants and proposals and how the federal money is spent in the districts as well. It's like, okay, if I live on 79th or 87th and the Lakeshore, I want to know, well, who is Valero? And where are these jobs coming from? And who's starting this huge campus of schools and retail space and all that? Let the people know who's working in our neighborhoods and how. Because I talked to the people at Rainbow Beach, and they don't know anybody who works there. And this is hundreds of millions of dollars being spent.
All right. Ms. Halverson?
I sponsored and I will continue to work on what's called the Disclose Act. It's a constitutional amendment against super PACs. As you it's not quite that much yet to come in to try to buy this election in Illinois, because those ads that are against me, that's one of the candidates that will never say anything negative about my opponents because people are sick of this negativity. I read this stuff every day. I'm listening to everybody fight against each other. I will promise you that everything I say is about my record, what I'm going to do for the people. I will never say anything bad about any one of the people sitting at this table.
All right. Did you have your hand up, Senator Hutchinson?
Me?
Did you have your hand up on this?
I'm sorry.
Did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah. Since I started in an impeachment trial, the very first time I spoke on the microphone, we were impeaching a governor. Since then, I voted to cut my own pay 4 times. I voted to protect whistleblowers. We voted to recall corrupt politicians. We wanted to call it out every time you see it because we had to change the fact that at a time when we need so many governmental solutions, nobody trusts the government. So we had to lead by example. It's difficult. You have to make very difficult decisions. I absolutely agree with campaign finance reform, and I absolutely think that sunlight is the best disinfectant.
All right, Mr. Pickens?
One of the commitments that I would make as the congressman is that I would create an accountability group, a group that will help me assure that all of my practices are of the highest in terms of ethics. And I would want people who would hold me accountable in relation to how I function as the congressman and how I function within the life of the district.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jonathan?
It is unfortunate what has happened to our leaders. And I think the problem is that a lot of our leaders are going to Washington only thinking about their own pockets. It is time they start thinking about the people. Most of the problems that these leaders are facing is already on the book, in as much as we see what is going on with what our brother is saying about following the rules. We need to follow the law of the land as elected officials. We are not above the law. And the law is clearly stated in all of these cases that these people take bribes, they spend the money that they're not supposed to spend on themselves. Right. This needs to stop.
Mr. Rayburn?
As the only fully licensed insurance producer in the state of Illinois that's running for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District, I am required, when I renew my license, to complete so many hours of ethics training.
That's why I take this seriously when I say these things about people having rules and not enforcing them. I took busloads of voters to 69th and Washington to make sure their registration was straight. And when I went down there, I found out my name had been purged from the ballots. This is what happens when you reach out and do what's right. God always helps you out. So my name is back on the ballot. I mean, as a registered voter, and you can vote for me.
All right. We are actually running late here. Let's have everybody wrap it up with a brief closing statement. Alderman Beal.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank everyone for coming out tonight to hear the candidates. If you just look at my record, you will see that I am the most qualified candidate in this race. I have 14 years of experience in government in the city of Chicago as alderman. I'm the former chairman of the Historic Landmarks Committee. I'm the former chairman of the Police and Fire Committee. And I'm currently the chair of the Transportation Committee in the city of Chicago. Again, I've created more senior housing than any alderman in the city of Chicago because in 1998 there was a study done that showed that the 60628 zip code had the oldest community in the nation in my ward. So when the foreclosure crisis hit, it hit my community the hardest because the predatory lenders preyed on my seniors. So therefore, I went right to work to build as much senior housing as I possibly could in the 9th Ward. And then we made sure that Augill Gardens had all 1,300 of those units rehabbed as far as affordable housing. We still have 600 units left to go. I'm the most qualified. I am a doer and not a talker. I have the largest development in the city of Chicago underway right now off the Bishop Ford Expressway that's going to create over 4,000 jobs. I'm going to build that 3rd airport. And lastly, let me just close by saying this. Congressman Bobby Rush was a former alderman. Congressman Danny Davis was a former alderman. Congressman Gutierrez was a former alderman. On the 26th, Anthony Beal will be a former alderman because I'm going to be your congressman of the 2nd Congressional District. Thank you so much.
Robin Kelly.
Again, I'd like to thank you for being here. My name is Robin Kelly, and I'm working extremely hard to be your next Congresswoman. Even though our district has challenges, I know we have great potential and great people. I have 20-plus years of experience on every level of government, successful experience, except the federal level. And I want to take my skills, my legislative past, programs I've implemented, I want to take those programs to the White House. I know we can be a fantastic district, and I know I can be your fantastic leader to reach our full potential. Thank you so much, and again, thanks for being here.
All right, Anthony Williams.
This is a historical moment, young people, and the seat belongs to the people and not an individual nor a party. You young people, you will be strapped with student loans, and that's why I will fight to reduce these student loans. You seniors, your Social Security is under attack, and your pension. Rocky Clark, who was paralyzed, a football player out of Robbins, I stood with Rocky, and I had an impact on public policy. House Bill 603 is about to be passed. Catastrophic insurance from a pom-pom girl to a cheerleader. They will be protected. I don't want to be a congressman. I want to be a servant. We need a servant right now. The most qualified, anybody can say they're the most qualified. I put people to work, but look at the websites. I think only about 5 of us have websites. Look at voteanthonywilliams.com. That's your seat. That's your decision. This can't be a popularity contest. Citizens, be citizens.
Gregory Haynes.
On average, I see on a regular basis in one of the offices I work at, 80 to 70,000 people a year. And when their unemployment insurance runs out or they're looking for work and they can't find work, I hear 7 words, 7, that if you care about a human being, then you can't sleep at night. And the bottom line is those words are, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay for the transportation or health care, education? Those are serious issues. Now, when it comes to employment, workforce development, as far as finding people work, I am the real jobs candidate here. I found thousands of people jobs in every industry imaginable. What I will do, I will start from day one. In the 2nd Congressional District, companies tend to only go where they tend to make a profit. There are major industry, transportation, meat processing, the healthcare industry, and automotive manufacturing. I will ensure that those companies create jobs, and then I will make sure that there is a system in place to help people find jobs. And that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Mr. Rayburn.
My name is Charles Rayburn. I've been married to the same woman 32 years. I sent 3 kids to college, Stanford University, MIT, and Xavier. My daughter's a nurse. I've sent thousands of more students to college as an educator. I've got a Blue Perk card, and I've been a security officer also. As I said earlier, you have to stand up for something when you're being treated wrong. This is not the first time I've been invited to a debate only to have the rules change. After I called the organizers and explained, I will not tolerate that. And everybody in here that's been inconvenienced because of my comments or didn't understand exactly what was going on, I apologize to you. But none of these candidates up here stood up for what they saw was wrong at the Rich Central debate. They stood cowered in the corner, mumbling to themselves. And
that
when we
sounds
came
like
here,
libel.
excuse me, you'll have your turn. I want my 5 seconds that she interrupted me. And if you notice, I followed the rules. I did not interrupt them, okay? And once again, when candidates came here late today, they came up with excuses for them because they are the privileged 5. And if you waste your vote on the privileged 5, it's your own fault. You need a fresh approach, a fresh breath of air, somebody that will fight for you just as I fought for what I believed in today. My name is Charles Rayburn, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rayburn. Ms. Muhammad.
What he just did was 2 cases of libel. Look it up. I'll tell you about it. I'm a media researcher, and I have experience at connecting the dots, connecting the money to what needs to happen. I know that there is fraud happening. I know that student loans are debilitating our graduates and our young people. I know that there's billions of dollars on real high-speed rail infrastructure that's waiting to be built. I know this because I ask the questions and I look around and I connect the dots. That's what I was trained to do at Northwestern, graduating 10 years after I enrolled. But, you know, I'm class of 88, Sister Clara Muhammad. So I'm a daughter of this district, and I know it from Markham to Harvey to University Park to Monee to Park Forest. And I know that the system is out of balance and it's not working for the residents. If there's more money and more policy put into prosecuting and protecting property but not protecting the people, it's out of balance. And the system needs to be fixed, and that's what I do. I'm a Tinkerbell. You know, we figure out how to fix stuff.
Thank you, Ms. Muhammad. Debbie Halverson.
Thank you all so much for being here and taking the time to listen to all the candidates. You have a major decision to make. There's a lot of great candidates. February 26th is going to be tough unless you want to go early vote. I grew up in this area, born and raised. I raised my children on my own. I went to Bloom. My now husband, Jim, went to Thornton and Harvey. We've seen the ups and downs. It's not easy. I went to school here. This is my alma mater, and they say this is an untraditional student that goes here. And then I was an adjunct professor. I had the blessing of being able to see so many wonderful students go through here. But you are our future. And I want to make sure that we connect the dots, that we bring more education money to the area. Just like CN, who gave $100,000 to Governor State University to do more with logistics. I want more public-private partnerships like that. I was in Congress. I served on the local, state, and federal level. I'm the only one that has created jobs, who served in Congress and can hit the ground running on day one. So I would be so honored if I could have your support. Thank you.
Larry Pickens.
I'm Larry Pickens, and I want to earn your vote. I want to earn your vote because I believe that the 2nd Congressional District needs a fresh start. I want to be the one who brings that fresh start. I want to do that by creating opportunities for small businesses to grow and prosper. I want to do that by eliminating toxic waste dumps in our communities that rob us of our health and vitality, and in essence, creating green jobs that will transform the communities in which we live. I want to do that by strategizing with you, by being a partner with you in order to bring about the kinds of changes that need to happen, the kind of violence prevention that we need to put in place in our communities so that we can move our young people from violence to opportunities to grow and to develop. These are the things that I want to do, and I think we need some new ideas, some new approaches, and that's what I'm about, and I hope you will support me. Thank you.
Victor Jonathan.
I'm Dr. Victor Jonathan, and I'm asking for your vote. I believe I'm the most qualified for this job. I'm a businessman for the past 30 years. I'm an alumni of Governor State University. I received my MBA here. I went to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, received a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, and a Doctor of Practical Theology from Master's Graduate School of Divinity in Evansville, Indiana. I have created hundreds of jobs as president of Pixel Information Technology in Markham, Illinois. Now, there's so many things that people are telling you, but I know what a lot of students are facing. The companies used to employ entry-level employees. They have stopped doing that. And part of that is because of outsourcing of our jobs overseas. I am one of the proponents to bring those jobs back so that when you graduate from here, you can get a job out of here. I got a job right out of University of Illinois. So there was not a day that I didn't have a job. When I got out of University of Illinois, I was recruited from there for entry level. This has to start here. We need to bring this back. These companies are bankrupting us. They're disinvesting in the community. We need to bring them back to reinvest in the community, and this is what I'm going to do for you in Congress.
Toy Hutchinson.
I'm Toy Hutchinson, and I'm so grateful that this has such a packed room, and I'm really happy to see students here. I'm running for Congress because I believe in us. I'm a wife, I'm a mother of 3 kids. They're 12, 14, and 16. So public education matters to me. How we invest in our kids matters to me. Whether or not this state and this country is going to be ready for you when you come out and you're ready to start, are we going to be ready for that? That is important to me. I'm a daughter of a mother I am so very proud of, and she's here tonight. She's retooling. She's like so many people who, didn't have a job, and then they put themselves back to school. She's going to be a nurse by the time June rolls around. 60 years old and wasn't afraid to keep dreaming. So when we talk about investing in our communities and giving people an opportunity to be full participants in our economy, I want to take that fight to Washington. I'm also a granddaughter. I just lost my grandfather. When we were losing him in his terminal illness, we knew that if we didn't have Medicare and Social Security, we didn't know what our family was going to do. I want to make sure that we fight to protect it, shore it up, and make sure that it doesn't go away for the people who need it the most. Everything that you will have to make a decision about now I know is big, but I believe in us. And I'm in this fight to fight for you, and I hope I earn your support.
All right, let's have a round of applause for all of the candidates. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I know that it's not hard, it's not easy rather, to run for public office these days. It's hard. And we need good people. And I want to second something that a few of them touched on. And there is a tendency, I know, of a lot of people to say, they're all a bunch of crooks. I'll tell you, they're not. There are some of them who are, and they need to be locked up. But there are a lot of good people out there, and I'm glad to see that some of them are running for office here in the second CD. I want to thank also CAN TV for covering this event for cable and online viewers. Information about CAN TV programming is at cantv.org. We also want to thank our co-sponsors, the League of Women Voters of Park Forest, of Homewood Flossmoor, and of Richton Park. Thank you all very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I hope you learned something tonight, and I hope you go out and vote on primary day.